A soldier lights a match in the desert. But what he sets on fire is not just a fuel depot, it's the illusion that Africa cannot defend itself. From the sands of Mopti to the gold veins of Gao. From the uranium pits of Arlit to the swamps of the Niger Delta, something is shifting. Mali no longer fights to survive. It fights to win. Niger doesn't just react. It anticipates. And Nigeria, long ridiculed as the sleeping giant, is now awakening with fire in its eyes. For decades, the West told Africa how to police its own borders, how to forgive its enemies. How to wait. But the ghosts of security, those foreign doctrines, fake alliances, and costly failures, are finally being buried. In their place rises a new doctrine, one built not on occupation, but on precision, courage, and knowledge of the land. This is not a war of conquest. It is a war of reclamation. And if you're here, watching, it's because you're ready to hear what they tried to hide, that Africa can, and will, write its own rules of survival. If this story already stirs something in you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. In recent weeks, the Sahel has ignited. In Mali, airstrikes shattered jihadist fuel depots in Mopti. In Gao, a hidden gold reserve was discovered, and immediately guarded by drones. In Niger, 81 terrorists were neutralized in a single preemptive strike near Arlit. In Burkina Faso, jihadists' bodies rot in abandoned forest bunkers. But all this fire is pushing something south. In Nigeria, 22 arrested jihadists were labeled repentant and quietly released in Borno. Banditry plagues Kogi. In the Niger Delta, militants fought off invaders with their own guns. And now, something far bigger is stirring. Because for the first time, 3 former colonies and 1 regional superpower are responding, not in silence, but with action. Let us begin where this new doctrine takes its boldest form, Mali. They said Mali would collapse. They said that once France withdrew, the country would splinter into warlord territories, overrun by jihadists, paralyzed by internal corruption. But Mali didn't fall. It adapted. It studied its enemy, not through Pentagon manuals or French doctrines, but through blood, betrayal, and terrain. And what emerged was a form of warfare that no textbook could predict, African-style precision warfare. It doesn't need to occupy. It doesn't parade. It neutralizes. In Mopti, a single drone strike didn't just eliminate a fuel depot, it triggered a chain explosion that sent shockwaves through the region. The target wasn't just logistical. It was psychological. Terrorist morale dropped overnight. Videos of fleeing JNIM fighters, faces caked in dust, eyes wide with panic, spread across encrypted platforms. A message had been sent, nowhere is safe now. In Gao, the government didn't wait for international investors to arrive. The discovery of a new gold reserve near Nsongo wasn't met with media announcements or flashy contracts. It was met with silence, and immediate drone deployment. No Western flag was raised. No French mining truck rolled in. Just the quiet hum of African-made tactics tightening around a critical resource. Even in Bamako, while civilians sip tea on warm evenings, reconnaissance squads move through the city's northern outskirts. One by one, jihadist cells are being neutralized. The African Legion, an unofficial name given by locals to the elite unit trained with Russian support, moves like smoke. Unseen, unannounced, but never unfelt. This is not about theater. This is not about headlines. This is about exhaustion warfare, the kind that doesn't care for viral clips but calculates every bullet. Every delay, every broken supply line. It's a doctrine born not in academies, but in necessity. And yet, while Mali sharpens its knives, the world keeps asking the wrong questions. They ask, who trained them? We ask, who forced them to learn? They ask, where did the drones come from? We ask, who ignored them when they asked for help? The answer isn't Russia. Or Turkey, or China. The answer is silence. The world turned its back, and Mali turned inward, and in that isolation, it found strength. Because when the West abandoned its model ally, it revealed its true intentions. It never wanted Mali to succeed. It wanted Mali to depend, to beg, to obey. But what Mali chose instead was unthinkable. It chose sovereignty. No matter the cost. There are no aircraft carriers. No permanent foreign bases. Just men and women who refuse to be hunted any longer. The FAMA command doesn't fight to protect French installations. It fights to reclaim land soaked in generations of struggle. It no longer asks Paris for approval before pulling a trigger. And if there's any doubt left about Mali's strategy, look no further than the mop-up operations in May. There, a Baraka Kinchi drone, a name locals give with a kind of reverence, spotted a hidden fuel caravan. One missile strike led to a second. 53 jihadists gone in one afternoon. No boots on the ground. No civilian casualties. Just precision. But precision is more than targeting. It's the art of choosing when to act and when to wait. In the northern corridor, when France's Orano company protested Mali's patrols near old uranium routes, no press conference was held. No insult was traded. The government simply redirected surveillance. Within days, suspected French-linked assets were quietly pushed out. No one needed to scream colonialism. The silence was louder. This is how African security should be spoken, not in volume, but in results. But this is also why the West is afraid. Because a Mali that wins alone is a Mali that teaches others how to do it. A sovereign Mali is a virus to the colonial system. Contagious. Dangerous. Inspiring. And so they start whispering again. Russia is manipulating them. They're becoming authoritarian. They can't win without us. But here's the truth. In 2021, Mali couldn't conduct a single night raid without foreign permission. In 2025, jihadist camps are being hit before sundown. In 2022, FAMA relied on convoy escorts for protection. In 2025, they set ambushes, then vanish before the enemy even understands. This is not luck. This is design. A design built in trenches, not treaties. And if you've been following this far, if something inside you is burning with pride or anger or hope, then let your voice be part of this movement. If you believe Mali's fight is Africa's fight, let us know in the comments. Speak your truth. Share your thoughts. This is a moment we write together. Because behind every statistic, 81 neutralized, new gold discovered, drone deployed, is a story. And the story is this: for the first time in generations, Mali is not asking for freedom. It is demonstrating it. They will say this is dangerous. That sovereignty makes nations unstable. But the only thing more unstable than a free Africa is a continent forced to pretend it's free. Mali's new doctrine doesn't need approval. It needs momentum. And if it keeps moving forward, the days of foreign military partnerships without respect are numbered. Because African warfare is no longer about defense. It is about declaration. A declaration that the desert is no longer empty. It watches. It remembers. And now, it strikes. France is not afraid of war. France is afraid of example. Because when Niger launched a preemptive strike that wiped out 81 terrorists in a single operation near Arlit, it didn't just kill insurgents. It shattered an illusion that the Sahel can't act without permission. The Nigerian armed forces didn't wait. They didn't send memos to Paris or wait for satellite confirmation from Washington. They followed a whisper from a local farmer, deployed aerial drones, triggered a blast that ignited jihadist landmines, and swept in before the dust could settle. This is not just bravery. It is intelligence turned action. It is what a sovereign army does when it stops asking to be protected, and decides to protect itself. And for France, that's the real threat. Because right next to that battlefield lies uranium. The soil around Arlet is not just rich in resources, it is soaked in decades of dependency. Orano, the French nuclear giant, has extracted Niger's uranium since the 1970s, building its nuclear empire while Niger remained in the dark. Paris lights its streets with uranium pulled from African land, but those who mine it sleep without electricity. And now, Niger wants to sell it elsewhere. That's why Orano panicked. When Niamey declared its right to export uranium freely, Orano cried foul. They called the transport illegal, threatened criminal prosecution, and warned third parties not to buy what France no longer controls. But this isn't just about uranium. It's about precedent. Because if Niger can do it, what's stopping Mali? What's stopping Burkina Faso? What's stopping Africa? And so, the whispers begin again. Jihadists are regrouping in the north. There's a new threat near the uranium fields. We must monitor cargo movements. But Niger didn't flinch. When Orano sent surveillance drones to track uranium flows, they were met with radar jamming. When French officials requested dialogue, Niger's response was clear: we don't negotiate our minerals. We secure them. And as this quiet battle over sovereignty unfolds, Burkina Faso is waging a war of memory. Because in the forests of Liptako and the ruins of Lorem, something else has been discovered, not resources, but the remnants of a narrative long buried. The 10th and 18th Rapid Intervention Battalions weren't just sent to destroy enemy camps. They were sent to rewrite history. In the so-called deathbeds of terrorism, the FDS and local volunteers are uncovering more than bodies. They're finding French ration packs, foreign-made equipment, detailed satellite maps. Tools that don't match the ragged condition of the insurgents using them. The question writes itself. How do men who look starved and broken hold weapons the price of a village? Who resupplies them? Who trained them? Who benefits when Burkina Faso bleeds? The West insists these are rogue cells, independent, fragmented. But the precision with which they move, the surveillance they evade, and the coordination they show tells another story. A story of outsourcing chaos. And that is the true danger of sovereignty. It forces you to look at what you've allowed to fester under the name of partnership. Burkina Faso, once caught in the rotating door of military coups and foreign advisors, has begun to ask hard questions. And in asking, it has begun to act. In the Suru zone, where jihadist enclaves once hid in swamps and forest belts, VDP squads no longer wait. Backed by real-time drone intel, they strike first. They ambush. They encircle. And then, they vanish again. They are not soldiers in uniform. They are farmers, teachers, hunters. But when the government said, "The enemy walks among you," they answered, "So will we." And this is what scares the international observers most, not a powerful army, but a people becoming the army. Because Burkina Faso's real revolution is not military, it is civic. The line between civilian and defender is dissolving. Trust is being rewoven. Not with payrolls and press releases, but with action. And slowly, the tide is turning. Once, the cities of Dori and Djibo feared the night. Now, they patrol it. Once, foreign forces drew the map of security. Now, the sons of the soil redraw it with calloused hands. It is not clean. It is not perfect. But it is theirs. Still, France waits. Watching. Waiting for the moment chaos returns, so it can step in once more as the savior. But Burkina Faso is not interested in saviors. It is interested in memory. It remembers the drone strikes that missed. The meetings that yielded nothing. The promises that came with strings. The troops that guarded corporations, not citizens. And in that memory, it builds something different. No more sprawling bases. No more VIP convoys. No more watching journalists write headlines from hotel rooftops. Now, journalists must follow the VDP into the brush, if they dare. Now, security maps are drawn not in Geneva but in the kitchens of Suru, the market stalls of Fada, the rooftops of Kaya. And the war is changing shape. Because as Niger defends its uranium and Burkina Faso resurrects its memory, a pattern emerges, one that terrifies the former powers. Africa is no longer reacting. It is initiating. It no longer waits for rescue. It is becoming the rescue. And with every French condemnation, with every veiled threat, with every whispered rumor of foreign sabotage, this movement grows. Not because it is loud, but because it is right. What Niger and Burkina Faso are proving, quietly, defiantly, is that when sovereignty is no longer theory, it becomes unstoppable force. And once that force begins to move, France can't stop it. America can't stop it. Even fear can't stop it. Because it is not built in tanks. It is built in memory. In resolve. In refusal. Refusal to die quietly. Refusal to be forgotten. Refusal to trade uranium for silence. So let them watch. Let them panic. Let them whisper. Because the day is coming when uranium won't just power Europe. It will power an idea. That Africa remembers. And Africa decides. If Mali teaches us how to strike and Niger teaches us how to defend, then Nigeria teaches us a harder truth, how to survive yourself. Because in Nigeria, the enemy doesn't just come from the outside. It wears a uniform. It attends your mosque. It shakes your hand in daylight and arms your assassin at night. While Sahelian nations battle foreign interference and desert insurgencies, Nigeria's battlefield is more fragmented, more internal, and perhaps, more dangerous. This is a nation that should be unstoppable. Oil-rich, population-strong, technologically poised. And yet, Nigeria bleeds from within. Banditry ravages states like Kogi. Militants and terrorists move freely across northern borders. In Borno, 22 jihadists were captured, only to be labeled repentant and quietly released. Some even re-emerge later, not as prisoners, but as candidates for political office. This is not just infiltration. It is accommodation. It is the normalization of the enemy. And still, Nigeria rises. President Bola Tinubu, inheriting a nation fatigued by corruption and confusion, did not call for peace. He called for emergency. A national security emergency. A restructuring not of ideology, but of machinery. No more overpaid VIP escorts. Their guns are now headed to forests. No more empty youth camps. They're becoming barracks. No more training manuals collecting dust. They're now live drills. Real bullets. Real threats. 20,000 new police officers. DSS agents redeployed to forest operations. Local security forces empowered to carry AK-47s. State police. Once a dream, now being written into law. And perhaps most importantly, memory is being reshaped. No more repentant terrorists. No more euphemisms for killers. No more ceremonies of forgiveness when the wounds still bleed. Because you cannot clean infection while praising the bacteria. In the Niger Delta, militants once infamous for oil blockades are now defenders against jihadists. In Cross River State, villagers intercepted armed strangers, not soldiers, not police, but civilians refusing to die politely. In River State, when 20 jihadists attacked, they didn't face a wall of bureaucracy, they faced hunters. Real ones. And none of the attackers walked away. This isn't Hollywood. There are no capes. Just conviction. And this is the fire Nigeria is beginning to remember, the fire of self-defense. But even now, the threat is not always visible. Because Nigeria's war is not just against guns and bombs. It is against ghosts in suits, corrupt officials who sell weapons to enemies. Ghosts in robes, preachers who bless the very violence they deny. Ghosts in silence, leaders who say nothing, hoping time will do their job. These ghosts are harder to fight. Because they look like us. Sound like us. Wear the flag. And still, Nigeria rises. It rises not because it has solved all problems, but because it has started to name them. It no longer says, bandits. It says, killers. It no longer says, insurgents. It says, enemy of the people. It no longer says, repentant. It says, accountable. And if you're watching this from anywhere in Africa, you must understand, Nigeria's battle is not local. It's continental. Because if Nigeria fails, the region shatters. But if it transforms, if this fire spreads, it can light a borderless defense. For the first time, Sahelian nations aren't looking up to Paris or Washington. They're looking sideways, to Abuja. To what this giant will do with its rage, its wounds, its awakening. And if you believe this fire matters, not just to Nigeria, but to Africa, then let it burn louder. Let it be heard. Drop a comment. Let the world know you're watching. Because this is no longer about tribe or tongue. This is about the child hiding in a school that may not be safe tomorrow. The farmer whose field became a battlefield. The trader who crosses roads with fear in his chest. The soldier whose paycheck comes from a government infected with betrayal. They are tired. And they are rising. The creation of a livestock ministry may sound bureaucratic, but it's war policy. It means ranching. It means no more open grazing that fuels farmer-herder conflicts. It means disarmament. It means structure. And behind every new policy lies an old truth rediscovered. That the strongest security is not in weapons, but in will. The will to say, enough. The will to face what has been hidden. The will to rebuild what was neglected. This is Nigeria's moment of choice. Not a loud revolution, but a steady reconstruction. Not a single hero, but millions of small refusals to go quietly. They may not call it war. But it is. They may not wear uniforms. But they fight. And they may not win tomorrow. But they've begun. And that is everything. Every war has a front line. But Africa's front lines are no longer in the deserts or the jungles. They are in the barracks. In the churches. In the offices of men who wear suits but serve sabotage. This is the twist that breaks the old story. The enemy is not only outside, it is within. When a soldier sells ammunition to bandits, he does more than betray a uniform. He arms the myth that Africa cannot govern itself. When a local official turns a blind eye to smuggling routes, he opens the door not just to drugs or guns, but to doubt. And when we call killers repentant, we don't show mercy. We show surrender. This is not about one country. It is about a system, one inherited from colonial governors and perfected by post-independence elites. A system that rewards silence. That punishes courage. That builds ministries of security while funding insecurity on the side. That is why even victory tastes bitter sometimes. Because for every drone that hits its mark, there is a hand within our own ranks guiding the next attack. They do not wear turbans. They wear ties. They do not ride motorbikes through the bush. They ride motorcades through capital cities. They speak our languages. Quote our heroes. Swear on our flags. And then, sell us piece by piece. But something is changing. In Mali, a junior officer refused to release a suspect tied to a French-linked group, despite orders. In Niger, a customs agent leaked proof of uranium diversion to the public. In Nigeria, a community arrested an armed police officer, who turned out to be transporting arms for a militia. These are not accidents. These are awakenings. Because the greatest revolution is not when the enemy flees. It is when the mask falls. When we see who we've let walk among us. When we stop calling traitors necessary evils and start calling them what they are, enemies in uniform. This is not a call to paranoia. It is a call to vigilance. Not every uniform is betrayal. But every betrayal now wears a uniform. So let Africa look inward, not to shame itself, but to purify its ranks. Let the new doctrine of security include not just defense from outside, but detection from within. Because we cannot win a war on two fronts, unless we recognize both. The bullet from the enemy wounds. The bullet from a friend destroys. Africa is not new to fire. It is new to fighting back together. From Mopti to Arlit, from Suru to Cross River, a new rhythm is forming, one of precision, refusal, and rebirth. The world watches, hoping we'll blink. That will fumble. That will tear each other down. But this time, we don't blink. Because we've seen what unity looks like under fire. We've seen what sovereignty feels like when defended by our own hands. We've seen what betrayal wears, and how it bleeds when exposed. Now, the question is no longer, can Africa rise? It already has. The question is, will we stand with it? If this story moved you, like, comment, and subscribe. Not just for the algorithm, but for the archive. Because one day, someone will ask where you stood, when Africa chose to rise. Let your name be part of that answer.